We are life. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः. शिला गुरुदेव की जय. शिला प्रभुपाद की जय. So text number 1536. All right. We are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 36. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names and his qualities. Srila Prabhupada's purport. An expert devotee of the Lord can mold his life in such a way that while performing all kinds of duties, either for this or the next life, he can constantly remember the Lord's name, fame, qualities, etc. The order of the Lord is distinctly there in Bhagavad Gita. One should work only for the Lord in all spheres of life. In every sphere of life, the Lord should be situated as the proprietor according to the Vedic rites. Even in the worship of some demigods like Indra, Brahma, Saraswati and Ganesh, the system is that in all circumstances, the representation of Vishnu must be there as the Yagneshwara, or the controlling power of such sacrifices. It is recommended that a particular demigod be worshipped for a particular purpose, but still the presence of Vishnu is compulsory in order to make the function proper. Apart from such Vedic duties, even in our ordinary dealings, for example in our household affairs or in our business or profession, we must consider that the result of all activities must be given over to the Supreme Enjoyer, Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared himself to be the supreme enjoyer of everything, the supreme proprietor of every planet, and the supreme friend of all beings. No one else but Lord Sri Krishna can claim to be the proprietor of everything within his creation. A pure devotee remembers this constantly, and in doing so, he repeats the transcendental name, fame, qualities of the Lord, which means that he is constantly in touch with the Lord. The Lord is identical with his name, fame, etc. And therefore, to be associated with his name, fame, etc. constantly means actually to associate with the Lord. The major portion of our monetary income, not less than 50%, must be spent to carry out the order of Krishna. Not only should we give the profit of our earning to this cause, but we must also arrange to preach this cult of devotion to others, because that is also one of the orders of the Lord. The Lord definitely says that no one is more dear to him than one who is always engaged in the preaching work of the Lord's name and fame all over the world. The scientific discoveries of this material world can also be equally encouraged in carrying out his order. He wants the message of Bhagavad Gita to be preached among his devotees. It may not be done amongst those who have no credit of austerities, charity, education, etc. Therefore, the attempt must go on to convert unwilling men to become his devotees. Lord Chaitanya has taught a very simple method in this connection. He has taught the lesson for preaching the transcendental message through singing, dancing and refreshment. As such, 50% of our income may be spent for this purpose. In this fallen age of quarrel and dissension, if only the leading and the wealthy persons of society agree to spend 50% of their income in the service of the Lord, as it is taught by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is absolute certainty of converting this hell of pandemonium to the transcendental abode of the Lord. No one will disagree to partake in a function where good singing, dancing and refreshments are administered. Everyone will attend such a function, and everyone is sure to feel individually the transcendental presence of the Lord. This alone will help attendants associate with the Lord and thereby purify themselves in spiritual realization. The only condition for successfully executing such spiritual activities is that they must be conducted under the guidance of a pure devotee who is completely free from all mundane desires, fruitive activities, and dry speculation about the nature of the Lord. No one has to discover the nature of the Lord. It has already spoken by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, specially, and in all other Vedic literatures generally. Just 1 second. No one has to discover the nature of the Lord. It is already spoken by the Lord Himself in the Bhagavad Gita, specially, and in all other Vedic literatures generally. We have simply to accept them in toto and abide by the orders of the Lord. That will guide us to the path of perfection. One can remain in his own position. No one has to change his position, especially in this age of variegated difficulties. The only condition is that one must give up the habit of dry speculation aimed at becoming one with the Lord. So important. And after giving up such lofty, puffed up vanities, one may very submissively receive the orders of the Lord in Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagwatam from the lips of a bona fide devotee, whose qualifications mentioned above. That will make everything successful without a doubt. Text 37. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary portions, plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshana. Purport. According to Panchatantra, Narayana is the primeval cause of all expansions of Godhead. These are Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Vasudeva and Sankarsana are on the middle, left and right. Pradyumna is on the right of Sankarsana, and Aniruddha is on the left of Vasudeva. And thus the four deities are situated. They are known as the four aides de camp of Lord Shri Krishna. This is the Vedic hymn or mantra beginning with Omkara Pranava, and thus the mantra established by the transcendental chanting process, namely Om Namo Dhimahi, etc. The purport is that any transaction, either in the field of fruitive work or in empiric philosophy, which is not ultimately aimed at transcendental realization of the Supreme Lord, is considered to be useless. Naradji has therefore explained the nature of unalloyed devotional service by his personal experience in the development of intimacy between the Lord and the living being by a gradual process of progressive devotional activities. Such a progressive march of transcendental devotion for the Lord culminates in the attainment of loving service of the Lord, which is called prema. Such a progressive march of transcendental devotion for the Lord culminates in the attainment of loving service of the Lord, which is called prema, in different transcendental variegatedness called rasas, tastes. Such devotional service is also executed in mixed forms, namely mixed with fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculations. Now the question which is raised by the great rishis headed by Shaunaka regarding the confidential part of Suta's achievement through the spiritual master is explained herein by the chanting of the hymn. Consider the 33 letters, and this mantra is addressed to the four devotees or the Lord with his plenary expansions. The central figure is Lord Shri Krishna because the plenary portions are his aides de camp. The most confidential part of the instruction is that one should always chant and remember the glories of Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with his different plenary portions expanded as Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. These expansions are the original deities for all other truths, namely either Vishnu Tattva or Shakti Tattvas. What shloka is it? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Niruddhaya Nama Sankarshanaya Cha. Okay. Text 38. Thus, he is the actual seer who worship in the form of transcendental sound representation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who has no material form. Our present senses are all made of material elements, and therefore they are imperfect in realizing the transcendental form of the Lord Vishnu. He is therefore worshipped by sound representation via the transcendental method of chanting. Anything which is beyond the scope of experience by our imperfect senses can be realized fully by the sound representation. A person transmitting sound from a far distant place can be factually experienced. If this is materially possible, why not spiritually? This experience is not a vague impersonal experience, it is actually an experience of the transcendental personality of Godhead who possesses the pure form of eternity, bliss and knowledge. In the Amara Kosha Sanskrit dictionary, the word Murti carries import in twofold meanings, namely form and difficulty. Therefore, Amurtikam is explained. Is Amurtikam? Okay. Mantra Murtim Amurtikam. Okay. Therefore, Amurtikam is explained by Srila Acharya Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as meaning without difficulty. The transcendental form of eternal bliss and knowledge can be experienced by our original spiritual senses, which can be revived by chanting the holy mantras or transcendental sound representations. Such sound should be received from transparent agency of the bona fide spiritual master, and chanting may be practiced by the direction of spiritual master. That will gradually lead us nearer to the Lord. This method of worship is recommended in the Pancharatrika system, which is both recognized and authorized. The Pancharatrika system has the most authorized code for transcendental devotional service. Without the help of such codes, one cannot approach the Lord. Certainly not by dry philosophical speculation. The Pancharatrika system is both practical and subtle for this age of quarrel. The Pancharatrika is more important than the Vedanta in the modern age. Okay. Text 39. O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate loving service. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Communion with Lord by transmission of the transcendental sound is non-different from the whole spirit Lord Sri Krishna. It is a completely perfect method for approaching the Lord. By such pure contact with the Lord, without offense of material conceptions, numbering 10, the devotee can rise above material plane to understand the inner meaning of Vedic literatures, including the Lord's existence in the transcendental realm. The Lord reveals his identity gradually to one who has unflinching faith, both in the spiritual master and in the Lord. After this, the devotee is endowed with the mystic opulences, which are 8 in number. And above all, the devotee is accepted in the confidential entourage of the Lord and is entrusted with specific service of the Lord through the agency of the spiritual master. Okay. A pure devotee is more interested in serving the Lord than in showing an exhibition of the mystic powers dormant in him. Sri Narada has explained all these from his personal experience, and one can obtain all the facilities which Sri Narada obtained by perfecting the chanting process of the sound representation of the Lord. Okay. There is no bar for chanting the transcendental sound by anyone, provided it is received through Narada's representative, coming down by the chain of disciplic succession or the parampara system. Text 40. Please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankering of the great learned men and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Sri Narada Muni, from practical experience, definitely asserts that the prime solution for all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. Okay. There are four classes of good men and there are four classes of bad men also. The four classes of good men acknowledge the authority of the Almighty God, and therefore such good men, when they are in difficulty, when they are in need of money, when they are in advanced in knowledge, and when they are inquisitive to know more and more about God, intuitively take shelter of the Lord. As such, Naradji advised Vyasadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of the vast Vedic knowledge and which he had already attained. As far as the bad men are concerned, there are four in number. Those who are simply addicted to the mode of progressive fruitive work and thus are subjected to accompanying miseries. Those who are simply addicted to vicious work for sense satisfaction and so suffer the consequences. Those who are materially very much advanced in knowledge but who suffer because they do not have the sense to acknowledge the authority of Almighty Lord. And the class of men who are known as atheists and who therefore purposely hate the very name of the God, although they are always in difficulty. Wow. Sri Naradaji advised Srila Vyasadeva to describe the glories of the Lord just to do good to all 8 classes of men, both good and bad. Srimad Bhagwatam is therefore not meant for any particular class of men or sect. It is for the sincere soul who actually wants his own welfare and peace of mind. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purpose of the first canto, 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagwatam, entitled Narada's Instruction on Srimad Bhagwatam for Vyasadeva. Why am I not visible in this today?
The next 2 verses are a little short, so I can read them.
Sorry?
Next 2 verses are a little short, so I can read them.
Definitely. Just give me 1 second. What is it? Yeah. Chapter 6.
Chapter 6. Conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. Verse 1. Sutta said, O Brahmanas, thus hearing all about Sri Narada's birth and activities, Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God and son of Satyavati, inquired as follows.
Just 1 second.
Purport. Vyasadeva was further inquisitive to know about the perfection of Naradaji, and therefore he wanted to know about him more and more. In this chapter, Naradaji will describe how he was able to have a brief audience with the Lord while he was absorbed in the transcendental thought of separation from the Lord, and when it was very painful for him. Text 2. Sri Vyasadeva said, What did you, Narada, do after the departure of the great sages who had instructed you in scientific transcendental knowledge before the beginning of your present birth? Purport. Vyasadeva himself was a disciple of Naradaji, and therefore it was natural to be anxious to hear what Narada did after initiation from the spiritual masters. He wanted to follow in Narada's footsteps in order to attain to the same perfect stage of life. This desire to inquire from the spiritual master is an essential factor to the progressive path. This process is technically known as Saddharma Pracha. How long is... Oh, I can read this too. Text 3. O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life after initiation? And how did you attain this body, having quit your old one in due course? Purport. Sri Narada Muni in his previous life was just an ordinary maidservant's son. So how he became so perfectly transformed into the spiritual body of eternal life, bliss, and knowledge is certainly important. Sri Vyasadeva desired him to disclose the facts for everyone's satisfaction.
Hare Krishna. O great sage, time annihilates everything in due course. So, how is that this subject matter which happened prior to this day of Brahma is still fresh in your memory, undisturbed by time? Srila Prabhupada's purport. As spirit is not annihilated even after the annihilation of the material body, so also spiritual consciousness is not annihilated. Sri Narada developed this spiritual consciousness even when he had his material body in the previous kalpa. Consciousness of material body means spiritual consciousness expressed through the medium of the material body. This consciousness is inferior, destructible, and perverted. But super consciousness of the super made in the spiritual plane is as good as the spiritual soul and is never annihilated. Sri Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for other places, and I had to pass my life in this way. In this previous life, when Naradji was impregnated with spiritual knowledge, by the grace of the great sages, there was a tangible changes in his life. Although he was only a boy of 5 years, that is an important symptom visible after initiation by bona fide spiritual master. I want to read this again. In this previous life, when Naradji was impregnated with spiritual knowledge by the grace of the great sages, there was a tangible change in his life. Although he was only a boy of 5 years, that is an important symptom visible after initiation by the bona fide spiritual master. Actual association of devotees bring about a quick change in the life of spiritual realization. How it is so acted upon the previous life of Sri Narada Muni is described by and by in this chapter. Text 6. I was the only son of my mother, who was not only simple woman but a maid servant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with the tie of affection. Text 7. She wanted to look after my maintenance properly, but because she was not independent, she was not able to do anything for me. The world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. When I was a merely child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. I was dependent on my mother's affection and had no experience of different lands. Once upon a time, my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent influenced by the supreme time. That is the way of dragging a sincere soul nearer to God. The poor boy was being looked after only by his affectionate mother, and yet the mother was taken from the world by supreme will in order to put him completely at the mercy of the Lord. Text 10. I took this as a special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benedictions for his devotees, and so thinking, I started for north. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Confidential devotees of the Lord see in every step a benedictory direction of the Lord. What is considered to be an odd or difficult movement in the mundane sense is accepted as a special mercy of the Lord. Mundane prosperity is a kind of material fever, and by the grace of the Lord, the temperature of this material fever is gradually diminished and spiritual health is obtained step by step. Mundane people misunderstand it. Text 11. Okay, this is important. After my departure, I passed through many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens in natural forests. Man's activities in agriculture, mining, farming, industries, gardening, etc., were all on the same scale as they are now, even previous to the present creation, and the same activities will remain as they are. Even in the next creation, after many hundreds of millions of years, one created is started by the law of nature, and the history of the universe repeats itself practically in the same way. The mundane wranglers waste time with archaeological excavations without searching into the vital necessities of life. After getting an impetus in spiritual life, Sri Narad Muni, even though a mere child, did not waste time for a single moment with economic development. Although he passed towns and villages, mines and industries, he continually went on to the progressive spiritual emancipation. Srimad Bhagwatam is the repetition of history which happened some hundreds of millions years ago. Srimad Bhagavatam is the repetition of history which happened some hundreds of millions years ago. As it is said herein, only the most important factor of history are picked up to be recorded in the transcendental literature. Text 12. I passed through hills and mountains full of reservoirs of various minerals like gold, silver, copper, and through tract of land with reservoirs of water filled with beautiful lotus flowers, fit for denizens of heaven, decorated with the bewildered bees and singing birds. I then passed alone through the forest of rushes, bamboo, reeds, sharp grass, weeds, caves, which were very difficult to go through alone. I visited deep, dark, dangerously fearful forests, which were the play yards of snakes, owls, and jackals. Srila Prabhupada's purport. It is the duty of a mendicant, Parivrajacharya, to experience all varieties of God's creation by travelling alone through all forests, hill, towns, villages, etc., to gain faith in God and strength of mind, as well as to enlighten the inhabitants with the message of God. A sannyasi is duty bound to take all risks without fear, and the most typical sannyasi of the present age is Lord Chaitanya, who travelled in the same manner through the certain Indian jungles, enlightening even the tigers, bears, snakes, deer, elephant, and many other jungle animals. In this age of Kali, sannyasa is forbidden for ordinary men. One who changes his dress to make propaganda is a different man from the original ideal sannyasi. One should, however, take the vow to stop social intercourse completely and devote life exclusively to the service of the Lord. The change of dress is only a formality. Lord Sri Chaitanya did not accept the name of a sannyasi, and in the age of Kali, the so-called sannyasi should not change their former names. Okay. Following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. In this age, devotional service is for hearing and repeating the holy glories of the Lord is strongly recommended, and one who takes the vow of renunciation of family life need not imitate the Parivrajacharya like Narada or Lord Chaitanya, but may sit down at some holy place and devote his whole time and energy. One who takes a vow of renunciation of family life may not imitate the preacher like Narada or Chaitanya, may sit down at some holy place and devote his whole time and energy to hear and repeatedly chant the holy scriptures left by the great acharyas like 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Okay. Text 14, leave one or two more. Thus travelling, I feel tired both bodily and mentally, and I was both thirsty and hungry. So I took a bath in river, lake, and also drank water. By contacting water, I got relief from my exhaustion. As a travelling mendicant can meet the needs of the body, namely thirst, hunger, by gifts of nature without being a beggar at the door of householders. The mendicant therefore does not go to the house of householder to beg, but to enlighten him spiritually. After that, under the shadow of a banyan tree in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the super soul situated within, using my intelligence and as I had learned from the liberated souls. One should not meditate according to one's personal whims. One should know perfectly well from the authoritative sources of scriptures through the transparent medium of the bona fide spiritual master, and by proper use of one's trained intelligence for meditating upon the super soul dwelling within the every living being. Okay, this is important. This consciousness is firmly developed by a devotee who has rendered loving service unto the Lord by carrying out the orders of the spiritual master. Shri Narad ji contacted bona fide spiritual masters, served them sincerely, and got enlightened rightly. Thus, he began to meditate. Read from 6:16 tomorrow. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.